Hello and welcome to Epic. Today with us, the ultimate camouflage pattern comparison. It's been 3 years since we did the last camouflage pattern comparison with Phantom Leaf, reasoning us to do a new comparison, only this time bigger, better, and also responding to your questions and suggestions last time. Because we want to have all information inside, we will do a lot of reading from the script, because we found it is more important to have all information included, but not to speak free. So for this reason, we will use our script. First of all, a comparison has to be objective. Objective and scientific. A comparison has to be objective. As many factors as possible have to be identical to make a fair and objective comparison. In the case of comparing camouflage pattern, this means that as many environmental variables as possible, for example light, season, place, posture and position of the model, even if possible the cut of the suit, with or without hood for example, remain the same. Only the camouflage pattern itself may change. Then of course the whole thing becomes elaborate. As I said, camouflage depends on various factors such as location, season, viewing angle, dryness or wetness, just to name a few, and of course on the purpose. Should camouflage work for a man, machine or animal? Is one in motion or staying static? These are all questions that must be asked if one wants a camouflage pattern to work optimally. Similar to shooting, where the result also depends not only on the weapon but also on the ammunition, the shooter, the weather and the intended use. It was clear to us that this would be a massive task, but we have taken it on and hope that you like it and can take something out of it. The idea behind the video is to have a reference book where you can compare the different patterns at different distances in different body positions by day and by night. This way all strengths and weaknesses of the camouflage patterns are objectively worked out as much as possible, so that you can decide for yourself what is the most suitable for your application. It will also make it easier for you to decide which compromise between specialization and generalization you want to make, and of course you can put together your suit according from different patterns. Then the question is, which one works well together? Another possibility is the question, how and where do I move with my camouflage pattern to achieve its best performance? In any case, we hope to support you with our overview. In this first video, we show you all the camouflage pattern by day, followed by another video with night vision shots with and without infrared illuminators. Self-criticism. In the selection of the suits, we have been guided by your wishes and by what appears most often in NATO, and here especially Europe and USA. Nevertheless, it remains a subjective selection. But we think 22 suits is really a statement. Keeping all variables constant was our primary goal. We tried to make as it comparable as possible and thus kept the location, viewing distance, viewing angle, dryness level, season, time of day and light as much identical as possible. The actors are the same size and the suits were chosen in a comparable cut, as field clothing if possible, so no combat shirt, combat pants. Since we want to address the wide use of camouflage uniforms, mainly BDU cuts have been used and no sniper ghillies or drapes, since here some of the camouflage effect is not created by the camouflage pattern, but by the cut and 3D material. When selecting the uniforms, we sometimes had to choose different sizes and different types of fabric, sometimes even used uniforms because nothing else was available. We point this out at the corresponding spot in the video. Not all camouflage patterns requests from the first video could be considered, but we increased the number of patterns from 7 to 22 and added Phantom Leaf with 3D elements as a little extra, but they will be compared separately. The focus was on NATO camouflage patterns in the most common in Europe and the newest ones on the market, plus a few domestic patterns, and of course also the hunting area is not missing. The shots are extremely untactical. No one would openly position themselves in the field or forest like this, but since we want to compare patterns and not make a search the camouflage pattern video, meaning your usage of shadow or terrain always in the direct line of sight, we ask you to take this into account. In addition, we are moving to distances well below the regular combat distances of 60 to 300 meters simply to show you the effectiveness in poor conditions. At present, drones for reconnaissance are standard in almost every country. The tendency is increasing. In the future, we can expect more and more mechanization and automation on the battlefield. Therefore, we also took pictures from a bird's eye view. We will briefly describe the individual shooting locations and perspectives before. The cameras we used were Sony FX30 with Sony 16-55mm 2.8 and a Panasonic Lumix G9 with 1260 2.8 to 4.0. This means that anyone can reproduce the result themselves and compare them with ours. Special thanks go out to Pine Survey, whose blog you should definitely check out if you are interested in camouflage. We'll put the link in the description. Further thanks to ArmyBug, the ProFlight Drone School and especially Holger, as well as Army Online Store, Recon Company, my whole Epic team who made it all worthwhile, and all the others who supported us so strongly. But here we go, have fun and entertainment with the camouflage patterns. We will first start with camouflage patterns introduced in armed forces. 5FT Flecktarn. Starting in Germany with our well-known pattern Flecktarn of the German Armed Forces. The manufacturer is Leo Köhler, classic cut for field shirt and pants. The pattern features the color light green, light olive, dark green, brown and black. It is not widely known that 5FT Flecktarn is now in the 5th generation, which features some drastic changes in the color scheme. This update was done to improve the performance of the pattern not only in terms of blending and breaking up the outline, but also to keep up with IR developments and the need to work under hyperspectral conditions. In our first comparison, we still had an older generation, which was criticized by you. We have corrected this. The field jacket has a German flag, which we were not allowed to remove. Please take it into account. Multitarn. We stay within German armed forces and go to the KSK, who uses Multitarn among other kits. Multitarn will gradually be issued to the rest of the troops, who currently use 5FT Flecktarn and Tropentarn. Our field suit is from Lindnerhof and is currently only available as combat field set. Accordingly, there are noticeable reinforced areas at the knees. Furthermore, our suit is equipped with Germany flags, which we are not allowed to remove. Multitarn has a total of 6 colors, and these are brighter than the familiar 5-color Flecktarn. In addition to the colors dark and light green and brown, there are now large areas of light gray and beige. The intention is that Multitarn should not only work in Europe or in desert areas, but in many vegetations with medium brightness. An important innovation of the Multitarn pattern is the optimal camouflage effect in the infrared range from 700 to 1200 nanometers, in which also the remaining light amplifiers and night vision devices work. Austria Camouflage Suit New. Moving to Austria, we have the Camouflage Suit New with us. The manufacturer is Fesca Classic BDU Cut. In September 2017, the Austrian Minister of Defense announced a new camouflage uniform for the Austrian Armed Forces, the Camouflage Suit New. This was to replace the old monochrome uniforms, which were known for their famous RAL 7013 color. The new camouflage pattern was introduced with a unique design that was met with mixed reactions from the public and soldiers. The Camouflage Suit New is designed as a multi-environment camouflage pattern that camouflages well enough in most areas rather than providing perfect camouflage in certain environments. The pattern uses spots instead of digital elements, distinguishing it from other Austrian camouflage patterns. Netherlands NFP. Jumping ahead to the Netherlands, which is participating with NFP. Here we also got a classic BDU cut. The manufacturer is KPU. In 2011, The Dutch Army released prototypes of a new fractal camouflage pattern. It is called the Netherlands Fractal Pattern (NFP) by several sources and has been released in 3 versions so far. A version for temperate areas, forests, NFP Green, a version for dry areas, deserts, NFP 10, and so-called transitional gear designed for field gear worn over suits in combination. The latter would theoretically work well in all environments, and soldiers would only need to receive a single set of field gear, which would obviously be logistically advantageous. The first uniform parts were issued in 2021. The first complete uniforms were issued in 2022, which will replace a DPM design. Finland M05. Up north to Finland with M05. The manufacturer is Origo Pro. The cut is based on the BDU. The official camouflage pattern of the Finnish military, known as M05, consists of a family of patterns, including forest, snow and desert variants. The forest version, which is the best known, is designed into a digital pattern with a mix of green, brown, black and light grey shapes, meant to mimic the Finnish forest landscape. Introduced in the 2000s, the M05 patterns are intended to provide effective camouflage in a variety of Finnish terrains and climates. Slovenia Slowcam. We arrived in Slovenia with the Slowcam camouflage pattern. Here we use the smog rather than a BDU jacket for the jacket. Unfortunately, we couldn't find another variant. The suit is one-off for a customer as a sample and not available for purchase. Slowcam, short for Slovenia Camouflage and now officially known as M12, was introduced in 2012-13. Initially, it was used by NATO allied special operation forces. Shortly thereafter, it became standard equipment for the Slovenian army. Ukraine MM14. We are jumping into Ukraine with MM14. This uniform in BDU cut is from Textile Contact LLC. The Ukrainian armed forces have been using a pixelated camouflage pattern for drylands and deserts since 2014. This pattern mixes in pixelated light and dark gray and light dark olive areas on a sand-colored background. In some Ukrainian sources it is referred to as MM14. USA OCP. At this point we look across the pond to the United States with OCP. We have an original uniform here that is unfortunately used. Manufacturer of the pants is Tullahoma Industries and the jacket is from Insect Shield LLC. OCP stands for Operational Camouflage Pattern, codename Scorpion W2. The US Army has been using this pattern since 2015 for the Army Combat Uniform, or ACU, as a replacement for the UCP camouflage pattern. This pattern was still in use until 2019 in Afghanistan. Multicam was also used for transition, which looks very similar to OCP. USA Marpat. We stay in the US but switch to the leathernecks using Marpat. The manufacturer is proper, cut is BDU. Marpat, short for Marine Pattern, is based on the Canadian Catpat and is a digital camouflage pattern with rather darker shades of brown, green and black and light olive. Multicam Tropic. Now we move on to commercially available camouflage patterns, which are also used by special forces. The first commercially available camouflage pattern from the USA is Multicam Tropic. We have here a BDU cut. The manufacturer is Leo Köhler. The shape of the original Multicam pattern adapted for green areas is much darker, which is why it works well in our landscapes and is therefore included in our series. ATEX FG. Also from the USA is a camouflage pattern ATEX FG. The manufacturer is proper. The cut is classic BDU cut. ATEX FG stands for foliage green, is sometimes affectionately called Endor camo, referring to the camouflage clothing worn by the rebels on the forest planet Endor from the movie Star Wars, infamous for little killer bears. The pattern for arid areas look a bit like an oil painting, featuring light shades of sand, green and brown, with multiple mixed tones. ATEX FG has been around since 2011 and often officially discontinued in 2018, but has been officially used by Russian units since 2022. ATEX FGX. Since ATEX FG is now a bit older, the manufacturer has developed new variants for different areas such as ATEX FGX that we have with us from the manufacturer TrueSpec in BDU cut. Foliage Green X has been on the market since 2017 and is supposed to be more versatile than the original Foliage Green, which can be seen well in the increased proportion of green and brown. Pancot Green Zone. Hopping over to the island, UK to be exact, this is where the Pancot Green Zone commercial pattern comes from, which we got from the manufacturer Leo Köhler in BDU cut. The digital pattern is made up of pixel-like shaped patches in brown, green and sand tone. Pancot Badlands. Same country, same manufacturer. Here we have Pancot Badlands in BDU cut, manufacturer is Helicon. This camouflage pattern is pixel design with a sand beige, light brown, grey, olive, dark brown intended for arid areas, is also used in our country. Concamo Green. We are back in Germany and have arrived at Concamo. The manufacturer is Leo Köhler, the uniform is in BDU cut. In our first comparison we still had the first generation of Concamo, which stands for Confusion Camouflage with us. Here now is the current version, which however is only available in uniform cut as remaining stock. The manufacturer has put the focus on throw-over camouflage clothing and gear, which you can currently also get well available. Concamo Green comes in multiple forms in white, sand beige, light and dark green, olive, dark brown, reddish, brown and greyish green, and is intended as a universal camouflage pattern in green-brown areas according to the manufacturer's website. Concamo Brown. The first generation of Concamo only came in green variant. The second generation has green and beige as well as the Concamo Brown shown here. Our uniform has no label, manufacturer unknown. The cut is again BDU. With a predominant brown tone, the camouflage pattern is intended for European and North American autumn and winter forests according to the manufacturer's website, as well as for dry areas with increased red tones. It is designed in multiple shapes in white, light grey, sandy beige, olive, dark green, reddish, brown and dark brown. Phantom Leaf Wasp 2 Z3A. We stay in Germany and with our personal favorite pattern Wasp 2, seen here in the variant Z3A in BDU cut. The manufacturer is Phantom Leaf for use. But don't let our preference influence you. Primarily, we wanted to compare this new camouflage pattern generation with the others. You make your own opinion. Z3A is a camouflage pattern from Phantom Leaf, primarily designed for areas with high vegetation, such as forested areas and tropical jungles. It consists of a light sand tone, light and dark green, black, light and dark brown, in a biomorphic design combined with honeycomb-shaped elements, which is the origin of its name. For comparison, you can find this pattern in each comparison group in the split image. Phantom Leaf Wasp 2 Z3A Plus 3D. The new type and uniform in BDU cut has a special feature compared to all the other uniforms. It has plenty of holding spots as standard for 3D elements, the so-called Python leaves from the manufacturer Phantom Leaf for use. This concept turns a regular BDU uniform into a very light ghillie, which helps to extremely break down the human outline, but without having to wear a heavy or hot ghillie. The key advantage over overthrows is that you always have the 3D camouflage in place, while still being able to access your pockets and gear unimpeded. The color of the suit can of course be changed at will by changing the leaves and adding other natural and artificial 3D elements to match the scene. As a result, no single suit resembles another, which further complicates the recognition of the camouflage pattern. The camouflage pattern Z3A is designed here analogously to the previous uniform for green areas. For the objective comparison, we have only compared this uniform with Wasp 2 without leaves. We didn't want to withhold the comparison of the effect with versus without 3D leaves from you, so that you can answer the question for yourself, is it worth putting leaves on this? By the way, we used about 50 leaves on each suit. And importantly, the leaves were not changed on the Wasp 2, Z2 and Z3A suits during the different sets. Phantom Leaf WASP2 Z2. Besides Z3A, Phantom Leaf also has Z2 to choose from. Manufacturer is Phantom Leaf for use, also BDU cut. Z2 is designed for the transitional area between Z1A, heat desert, and Z3A, meaning grassland, scrubland, and in some places rock and gravel. However, it is also frequently used in our latitudes in winter. The pattern is built in a light grayish-white, sandy beige, light, dark green, light and dark brown and black. Phantom Leaf WASP2 Z2 plus 3D. To round things off, here again as a variant with Python leaves in comparison. As with Z3A with leaves, we will compare this pattern only with the WASP2 variants to remain objective and fair. The point is to show you the difference between with versus without leaves. Phantom Leaf WASP1 Z3A. We have already reported about it. Phantom Leaf has started a cooperation with Miltech, which runs under the label Siftek. The camouflage pattern WASP1 Z3A from Germany, which is exclusively available at Miltech and shown here, serves the same operational zone as WASP2 Z3A, but in a modified pattern. The honeycomb-like elements can also be found on WASP1, but the pattern has a bit more brown content than WASP2, since the colors and design elements are very similar. WASP1 and WASP2 can be combined well, we think. The manufacturer here is Miltech, the cut is BDU Classic. Since this pattern is a brand new and we don't have any comparables yet, we definitely wanted to include WASP1 as well. It is constructed in a light gray-white light and dark brown light and dark green black. Phantom Leaf WASP1 Z2. Also from Miltech Siftek comes our next uniform in BDU cut, which is the WASP1 Z2 pattern. The dominant light and dark brown tones and light and dark green tones combined almost white spots and very dark brown elements make a good mix for dry and arid areas, but also forests and fields like WASP2 Z2. Novritsch Kreuzotter. We jump once again to the neighboring country of Austria and take on board Novritsch Kreuzotter, which appeared brand new on the market this year. The same named manufacturer of the BDU cut uniform should be familiar to everyone in the airsoft scene. This is exactly what Kreuzotter was designed for. The idea behind is to have a camouflage pattern that is used exclusively in the sports or hobby sector, so that no confusion or political connection is possible. It is in sandy beige, light and dark green, light and dark brown and some intermediate shades, and is designed for the forest and field in Europe. The base of the pattern is a tiger stripe pattern from the USA. Realtree Advantage Timber. One last jump to the USA to Realtree Advantage Timber from Jordan Outdoor Enterprises. This suit is not available in BDU cut according to our research, so we turn to this garment from the manufacturer Pinewood. Realtree is a hunting pattern which predominant brown tones definitely belongs in our comparison and has its justification for existence. Our first scene is a typical open field with woods in the background. The distance to our camouflage patterns is 40 meters or 130 feet, horizontal line of sight. Here we find dominant light and dark greens, but browns and yellows are also present in various shades. We have direct sunlight and as a result harsh cast shadows that can be seen on pockets or jacket hems, for example. These are often telltale signature features that set clothing apart from nature. The background tends to be dark at the top and very light at the bottom. This means that suits with a light mixed color will be more visible when standing and will work better when kneeling. Darker suits, just the opposite. These are all relevant points that we want to make visible. When kneeling, all camouflage suits are slightly covered by vegetation. Since the background is still dark even when kneeling, the lighter ones, especially the camouflage suit New, Multitan and WASP2 Z2 stand out more than the others. It is also clear here how important proper head camouflage is, but we used solid color balaclavas for comparability, since headgear wasn't available from all camo patterns, not to mention in a roughly comparable cut. When standing, it becomes even clearer with the 3 uniforms on the left, but here you can see very well how the camouflage patterns work. Camouflage suit new, Multitan, NFP, 5FT flag tan and MO5 look fairly monochrome, with 5FT flag tan working quite well here. WASP2 Z2 is too bright, WASP2 Z3A breaks the outline strongly, the pattern unfolds its effect as a pattern even at this distance. Here the same set in black and white to illustrate the monochrome effect of the camouflage pattern at 40 meters, which is especially relevant in twilight, where humans have only reduced color vision. Also many animals do not recognize any or less colors. Birds such as crow or turkey are an exception. This is a connecting point for the hunters among you. In this set almost all suits work well in the quiet light field when kneeling. While standing, Badlands in Concamo Brown can score here, just as WASP2 Z2 seems quite bright here. On the other hand, the relatively dark Multicam Tropic fits well into the scene with full direct sunlight, even if the pattern looks very monochrome. Pencott Green Zone WASP2 Z3A scored well in terms of color and with good pattern recognition. Here is the same set in black and white to illustrate the monochrome effect of the camouflage patterns at 40 meters. WASP1 Z2, WASP2 Z3A and Green Zone show the camouflage patterns and outline breaking most clearly here. In this set OCP is very bright, ATEX FG is a little better. Kreuzotter, WASP2 Z3A, ATEX FGX and MARPAD work very well. When standing, OCP and ATEX FG appear very bright, Kreuzotter is a bit brown and especially monochrome looking. The overall pretty dark FGX fits well into the image. MARPAD is also a bit too bright for this background. In the black and white image, all patterns except WASP2 appear monochrome, only ATEX FG shows a rudimentary pattern. In this set, the first two camouflage patterns stand out again, MM14 and WASP1 Z2. Slowcam and WASP1 Z3A work excellently here. Advantage Timber can also score against a dark background, but is quite brown. Again in standing, the first two patterns stand out clearly here. Slowcam is rather plain, while the Z3A variants WASP1 and WASP2 do a good job of breaking up the shape with the patterns. Advantage Timber is a bit too brown, heavy for the green background. In the black and white image you can see a rudimentary pattern at MM14, Slowcam remains rather monochrome, both WASP1 and 2 variants still show a clear pattern at this distance and Advantage Timber is monochrome again. Here now is our phantom leaf comparison with and without Python leaves on the Taipan suits. Especially with Z3A, which is designed for green areas, you can see the advantages of 3D camouflage very well in this shot. This does not change in the standing shot either. The contour of both suits with 3D is broken up much better than without Python leaves, as the bright areas of WASP2 Z3A interact well with the leaves and create a strong 3D effect. Here it can be seen well in the comparison of the suits with and without leaves how telltale shadow edges, for example jacket hem and pockets, are eliminated by the leaves. The brightness of the WASP2 Z2, which is intended for semi-arid areas and is therefore quite bright, in the set can be significantly adjusted using the leaves. We are in the next scene, same setting as at 40 meters, but at 10 meters or 33 feet distance. Open field with forest background, horizontal view. At this short distance we have all the uniforms shown for you, individually standing, kneeling and prone. When standing, the new Austrian Army camouflage suit is very bright and doesn't fit well in this scene. It doesn't get much better when kneeling either, although the sand tones in the uniform match the field a bit better. In prone, the green tones can score, but the bright spots are treacherous in this scene. The bright multitone doesn't fit too badly in the lower area, but the upper part of the body is clearly too bright. It gets a little better when kneeling. And when prone, the camouflage patterns behave similarly to the camouflage suit new, but with smaller bright spots that are not as telltale. The bright spots in the camouflage patterns of WASP2 Z2 don't blend in here, but the green and brown tones are well done. This does not change in a kneeling position, but in a prone position you have a well-functional result. The shape is broken up. The camouflage pattern from the Netherlands does have a high green content, but with a kind of gray cast, which is why it doesn't really fit into this image when standing. It looks much better when kneeling and is almost invisible in this image when lying down. WASP2 Z3A has a well-hit greens and browns for this environment similar to Z2. However, when standing, the light spot stands out against the dark background. When kneeling, the pattern fits the image better. And when prone, it disappears almost completely. Five FT Fleckton like NFP and MO5 are rather dark camouflage pattern here. In direct sunlight has a balanced color ratio to the surroundings, even with the pattern still looks quite monochrome even at this short distance. When kneeling, the green tones in particular fit in well. And 5FT also does a good job in prone. MO5 is remarkably monochrome, even at this short distance. This doesn't change when kneeling. The colors are a bit too dark for our scene. In prone position, however, the slightly darker green is not as noticeable, so a good camouflage effect is achieved. Pancort Badlands is strikingly bright and monochromatic for this distance and environment. This is true for the standing, kneeling and prone positions. Concamo Brown has matching greens and browns here, and the sand tones don't match the environment too badly either. Overall though, the patterns look pretty monochromatic even at this short distance, which doesn't change in the kneeling position. One thing to note here is the Velcro traps used by the manufacturer, which has nothing to do with the camouflage pattern, but should be considered in the overall effect. On the ground, unfortunately, you can see that even with the most careful work, mistakes happen and the uniform slipped up, resulting in a very dark and straight line appearance. That being said, the lighter tones here are well matched to the dry grass. Multicam Tropic does a good job here in direct sunlight, standing up with a darker background. Kneeling, it's a touch too dark for this environment. Unlike prone, where it just disappears. Pancort Green Zone behaves similarly to WASP2 Z3A. Standing up, the bright areas are noticeable. Kneeling, it looks better. Prone, it is barely visible. Concamo Green is generally a bit bright here in the scene. but the pattern works well at the short distance. Kneeling is similar, although the pattern doesn't look too bright here. It does a good job in the prone position. OCP is very bright and monochromatic here. This may be partly because the uniform is used and already a bit washed out. In general though, it's more meant for desert-like areas and would come off similarly bright here as a camouflage suit new and multi-tan. Unfortunately, this does not change kneeling or prone. ATEX FG is too contrasting and bright here when standing against a dark background. Kneeling, it gets minimally better. Prone, the bright areas are a bit of a giveaway, while the greens fit quite well. Kreuzotter is well balanced in brightness, but a bit too brown for this environment. Kneeling, on the other hand, it looks better. And prone, it does a very good job. ATEX FGX is very balanced here in the blazing sun, and the colors also fit the image well. This is true for standing and kneeling. Prone, it is very good. Worth nothing here are the Velcro areas, whose colors does not stand out from the suit. Marpat fits quite well in terms of color, but it's quite monochrome and a bit light on the short distance in standing and kneeling. Prone, however, it blends in well, with only the black dots appearing a bit unnatural. MM14 is clearly too bright in the sun and in this setting in all three stances. WASP1 Z2 is a bit too bright for this setting with the sand tones. Brown and green blends in well. When kneeling, you can also see how well the camouflage breaks the outline. You can barely make out the upturned knee. When prone, only the light areas give away the camouflage pattern. The green and brown tones again fit well into the scene. Slow cam is revealing here due to the lighter spots, otherwise the pattern works well at this distance. It gets even better when kneeling. Prone, it is also a very good fit. WASP1 Z3A is similar to WASP1 Z2 with the green and brown tones well fitted and well outline breaking, while the lighter areas stand out a bit when standing against a dark background. It gets much better when kneeling. And is well integrated into the environment when prone. It should be noted that details are often critical for the overall camouflage effect. The black zipper is clearly noticeable and detracts from the overall effect. Otherwise, Advantage Timber is too dark when standing and kneeling. But when prone, it fits well into the picture. WASP2 Z2 with Python leaves shows how well the outline is broken even at short distance. although the lighter spots are a bit eye-catching. It's a bit too dark when kneeling, and a bit too bright again when prone, although it's better hides the typical straight back due to the 3D elements. WASP2 Z3A with Python leaves does a good outline breaking job like WASP2 Z2 with leaves. At the same time, Z3A fits better here in terms of color than Z2. Already in the kneeling position, it becomes more difficult to make out the person. In prone position, it is completely hidden. At the same time, as I said, about 50 leaves were applied to the suit by us. We change from open field to the forest. The distance to the camouflage suits is 40 meters or 130 feet, and the shots are taken horizontally. The environment is quite open and there's no sunlight, which means that there is barely any shadow cast. The light appears more diffuse, which means there are fewer harsh cast shadows on both the suit and the surrounding area. The ground is more dominant brown, while the background contains more green tones. Kneeling shows all the camouflage suits. Surprisingly, the lighter suits like Camouflage Suit New and Multitan work better than expected here. WASP2 Z2 can still be assigned to the lighter suits, while NFP, Flecktan and M05 are clearly too dark here and look like a stain. WASP2 Z3A on the other hand fits well into the scenery. In the standing position we are surprised by the Camouflage Suit New, which blends in well. However, the shoulders, which are equally bright due to macroscopic pattern symmetry, are noticeable. Multitan is still too bright. WASP2 Z2 fits fairly well in the environment. NFP is also better than in kneeling, while WASP2 Z3A performs well. Flecktan and especially M05 look still dark and monochrome. Here's the same set in black and white to illustrate the monochrome effect of the camouflage patterns at 40 meters. This is especially important at twilight, where colors are less visible. In this set, Multicam Tropic, which worked very well in the open field and full sun, stands out clearly too dark in the kneeling position. Pancot Green Zone is also pretty dark, while Badlands and Concamo Brown appear too light. Concamo Green works well here. Standing observations are almost identical to the kneeling position. Badlands is marginally better. Almost all patterns except WASP2, Z2 and Z3A appear very monochromatic. The monochrome and therefore less outline breaking behavior of the patterns become clearer once again in the black and white image. In this set, Kreuzotter is the darkest pattern, but it fits quite well with the trees in the background. All the patterns to the left of it are bright, but still fit in well, while the patterns to the right of Kreuzotter fall into the darker category. FGX and Mapat do a good job here as well. This set is very interesting to look at. OCP is a good fit here in the lower section, while the upper section looks too bright. ATEX FG also fits in well, as do WASP2 Z2, WASP2 Z3A and Mapat. Only Kreuzotter and FGX look a touch too dark and ATEX FGX too monochrome, which is also true for Mapat. For clarification, the set again in black and white. In this set, Realtree fits in nicely in kneeling. MM14, even as bright as it is, it's better in the woods than in the fields. WASP1 Z2 is again a little too bright. Slowcam is a wee bit too dark and monochromatic. WASP2 Z3A and WASP1 Z3A work best here along with Realtree. In standing, Realtree gets a little worse, All the other patterns are similar in behavior as in kneeling. Black and white again shows how monochrome, Realtree and Slowcam perform at this distance. Both have quite less contour breaking properties. Here now is our phantom leaf comparison with and without Python leaves on the Taipan suits. It's a bit spooky how a few Python leaves can break up the outline so fast. When kneeling, the increased camouflage effect is noticeable once again on both Z2 and Z3A with leaves. When standing, Z2 with leaves gets a little worse. The uniform looks a little dark here, but still breaks up the outline very well. Z3A with leaves works best in this set. In black and white, you don't have a notable difference in the patterns compared to the previous shot. Again, you will find a strong breakup the shape of the profile. We jump in the same scene to 10 meters or 33 feet. Here a light green background is now visible on the ground, while the front area is primarily brown. The background here also appears more brown than green compared to the 40 meters. Also, it is the exact same spot. Standing up, the new Austrian Army camouflage suit Nu is good in the lower area. The shoulders are a bit too bright. Color-wise, it fits well into the picture. Kneeling and prone, however, the pattern again looks a bit too bright for the surroundings. Multitan surprises us here in the forest at this distance. Although the pattern looks almost monochrome and is a bit too bright in places, it fits well into the environment. This doesn't change when kneeling, but when laying down, it's a bit too bright. Wasp2 Z2 is generally good at breaking the contour at this distance. The chest area is a bit too bright, otherwise it blends in well when standing. Kneeling, the light areas again betray the pattern. While lying down, it blends in well. NFP looks too dark and monochrome in this area when standing. And kneeling. Lying down, it's well balanced in color, but a bit too bright. Wasp2 Z3A blends in well here in the upper area and breaks up the outline, but the legs are a touch too dark in standing. Kneeling, the flat knee is a bit light, otherwise the pattern blends in well. Lying down, only the lighter areas stand out a bit, but the outline is well broken. It almost looks like the stump of the tree behind it has been colored lighter. 5FT Flecktarn looks very dark at the short distance, making the whole figure noticeable, especially in the lower area. The torso to the abdomen are well fitted. It gets better when kneeling, though the pattern looks monochromatic. Prone, on the other hand, the 5FT Flecktarn camo does a good job. MO5 is strikingly monochrome even at this short distance, analogous to the open area. In addition, here in the forest it's very dark. Kneeling, it gets a little better on the torso. Lying, it is well fitted and similar to 5FT Flecktarn. In Badlands, the shoulders are light when standing, otherwise it fits well in this environment. When kneeling, the too bright part moves to the lying leg, and lying, it is generally too bright for this environment. Concamo brown is effective in the chest area and the legs, but the shoulders are bright here when standing. Kneeling, the whole suit looks too bright and monochromatic. The same is true for the prone position. Multicam Tropic is by far the darkest pattern in this set. It almost looks black and the camouflage pattern is almost unrecognizable. This makes the outline easy to target. This doesn't get any better when kneeling, but when prone, on the other hand, it's pretty well blended in. Bangkok Green Zone is well balanced blended in, and the camouflage pattern breaks up the outline nicely when standing. Kneeling, the upturned knee is clearly visible, but the colors fit well. When prone, Green Zone has a few lighter spots, but it still matches the environment. Concamo Green looks a bit too dark for this environment, but shoulders and chest fit well. Kneeling, it is much better integrated into the environment. While prone, it has a good camouflage effect. OCP is very monochrome at this distance, but except for the shoulders, it fits well into the set when standing. Kneeling and prone, it again looks too bright. ATEX FG surprised us here because it's not too bright as expected. It blends in well even if it looks a little too monochromatic. Kneeling, only the flat leg is a bit too bright. While the prone position is generally too bright. Kreuzotter is close in color to the dark trees, but looks a bit dark for this position. Also, you can see much of the pattern despite the short distance. Kneeling is similar to the standing position, but a little better. Prone, the pattern is perfectly matched to the forest floor, and only the green balaclava gives away the position here. ATEX FGX is too dark and too monochrome when standing. Kneeling, it fits much better with a brightness but remains without contrast. In prone position, it's just a touch too bright for its surroundings. Mapat fits quite well in terms of color, but is relatively monochromatic at the short distance when standing and kneeling. In prone position, however, it's too bright for this environment. MM14 is balanced when standing, only the shoulders are a bit too bright. Kneeling, the whole pattern again appears much too bright for the environment, as well as prone. WASP 1 Z2 is well fitted and contour breaking when standing, except for the left shoulder area and a small part of the chest. When kneeling, it is again noticed too bright in places, exactly the same as when prone. Slow cam is a tiny bit too dark for the spot, otherwise the outline is broken well. When kneeling, it blends in a bit better. In prone, it is very good in camouflage. WASP-1 Z3A looks a bit too dark and also a bit monochrome when standing, but when kneeling it provides a good camouflage effect. Also when prone, the pattern blends in well with the surroundings. Realtree is also a touch too dark, but the upper body blends in well. It gets even better when kneeling. And it's hard to spot when prone too. WASP-2 Z2 with python leaves is very dark here, but the outline is broken up well. You can barely see how the legs are positioned. Kneeling, it blends in nicely with the surroundings. In a prone position, the upper area is a bit light, but the outline is well broken up. WASP-2 Z3A with python leaves is slightly too dark for this environment, but the color blends in well. Kneeling, it gets better again. And prone, it's hard to explain what exactly you see there, and actually only the balaclava is noticeable as unnatural. Aerial reconnaissance by drones is an increasingly serious threat to ground troops. For this reason, the next shot is a bird's eye view at 20 meters or 65 foot diagonally from above. We are at the edge of the forest with a mixed green-brown ground. We have diffuse and very dimmed light and no direct sunlight. The background is different, almost monochrome, brown in the area of legs and almost monochrome dark green in the area of the torso. In the kneeling position, Camouflage Suit New, Multitan and WASP-1 Z2 are a bit too light, NFP is too dark. WASP-2, Z3A and 5FT Flecktarn fit in well balanced, and M05 works best here, although it's a very monochrome and therefore does little to resolve the outline. Very noticeable is the bright eye slit of the balaclava, which could be improved with face camouflage. While standing, the Camouflage Suit New gets worse, Multitan and WASP-2 Z2 a little better. NFP remains too dark, WASP-2, Z3A and 5FT Flecktarn continue to behave balanced. M05 is equal to the kneeling position. Here's the same set in black and white to illustrate the monochrome effect of the camouflage patterns at 20 meters. In this pattern set, you have a similar behavior as on 40 meters in the forest. Multicam Tropic is too dark and monochrome, Badlands and Concam Brown too bright. To the right of WASP-2 Z3A, you have a balanced but still a little too bright appearance with Green Zone and Concamo Green. In the standing position, the observations are almost identical to the kneeling position, but Green Zone and Concamo Green are a bit better here than in the kneeling position. To compare the camouflage patterns on monochrome, once again the black and white view. Here we see that OCP and ATEX FG stand out too brightly and Kreuzorder is a tiny bit too dark. Balanced are again WASP2, Z3A, ATEX FGX and MAPAT. In standing position, the brightness of the patterns is identical. Kreuzorder, FGX and MAPAT looks very monochrome. For clarification, the set again in black and white. In this group we have Slocum and Advantage Timber as the darkest patterns, followed by WASP1, Z3A, MM14 is too light, WASP1, Z2 and WASP2, Z3A fit well. MM14 degrades in the standing position, the other patterns are unchanging to the kneeling position. Black and white again shows how monochrome Realtree and Slocum work at this distance. Here is a phantom leaf comparison with and without Python leaves on the Taipan suits. As with the other settings, you can directly see the advantage of three-dimensional camouflage on the same patterns that do not have 3D camouflage. Although the standing stance is actually the most noticeable, in this shot you again have a significantly increased camouflage effect compared to the two uniforms without the leaves. In black and white, Z3A with leaves shows up well blended in, Z2 with leaves breaks in here the most. Stop. We jump in the same scene at 10 meters or 32 foot, but remain in the bird's eye view. The light is less diffuse. The setting is generally brighter than at 20 meters. This is due to the settings of the second camera, with which the shots were made at this distance. The selected spot is in the shade, we have a brown ground and the green trees in the background. The camouflage suit new is too bright for the dark background in this picture. This is true for standing and kneeling position. Also in the prone position, the camouflage pattern can score here. Multitan is also a bit too bright for the surroundings, but it fits in better than the camouflage suite new of the Austrian armed forces. There's no noticeable difference when kneeling, but the camouflage works well when prone. The symmetrical dark knee patch and velcro trim on the upper arms appear revealing here. WASP2 Z2 takes advantage of the remaining sunspots in this environment and blends in. It gets a little better again kneeling down. And while prone, the pattern is nearly perfect here. NFP is well color matching standing up. This gets even better when kneeling. In prone position, the camouflage is just a little too green for the brown background, but otherwise works quite well. WASP2 Z3A does a good job of breaking up the outline in the setting and blending in with the surroundings in terms of color. It improves again when kneeling, and when prone it is similar in a performance to WASP2 Z2 in this set. Also, it is a primarily green camouflage pattern on brown ground. 5FT Flecktarn can also convince us in this setting and blends in. This applies to the standing and kneeling positions, while prone it is almost invisible. MO5 again is very monochrome, but fits well into the environment in terms of color. There's hardly any difference between standing and kneeling. And in the prone position it is a little too green for the brown background. Badlands is consistently too bright for this set. This is true for all three postures. Concamo Brown is a bit too bright against the green background in the upper area, but the legs are well matched to the ground. Kneeling looks brighter than the background throughout. And this is also true for the prone stand. Multicam Tropic is again too dark and too monochrome in this shot. The pattern is not well seen standing up, so there's no outline breaking effect. It looks a little better when kneeling. And it also blends in well when lying down. Green zone is a bit too bright here. Also, the green tones don't really fit when standing. Kneeling, on the other hand, it blends in much better. And the prone position also had a good camouflage effect. Concamo green fits in well with the brown tones, but the torso is a bit too bright when standing. When kneeling, the whole uniform is a bit too bright, as well as when prone. But here the outline is broken up nicely. OCP, like Badlands, is far too bright for our set. Unfortunately in all three postures, and therefore very eye-catching. ATEX FG looks almost monochromatic in the setting and also too bright, but darker than Badlands. No improvement is noticeable when kneeling or prone. Kreuzotter showed the camouflage pattern well at this distance, but is too brown for the green background when standing. It blends in better when kneeling, and is well matched in color when prone, although the recurring pattern of tiger stripes is a bit noticeable. ATEX FGX is too dark and too monochrome when standing. Kneeling, it fits better into the environment. Also prone is not too bad due to the camouflage pattern, even if the colors do not match the ground. Mappat looks dark and monochrome in this setting. Standing, and kneeling, there's hardly any difference. While the small black elements reveal the camouflage pattern when prone. MM14 is clearly too bright in standing. Kneeling, and prone, it absolutely does not fit in here. WASP1 Z2 is well matched in color except for the shoulders, which are clearly too bright. When kneeling, the outline is broken up well, but again too many light areas for this position. The same applies to the prone position. Slowcam is a bit too dark, but still fits well into the environment. Kneeling shows a similar behavior. Prone is better fitted. WASP1 Z3A looks a bit too dark here and also a bit monochrome with too bright shoulders when standing and kneeling. While prone, it is still a bit too bright as well, but does a good job of breaking up the outline. Realtree looks too dark at this distance when standing. It's clearly better when kneeling, and prone, it shows what it can do. WASP2 Z2 with Python leaves is again dark, but the contour is well broken down. It gets a little better when kneeling, prone, it is too bright for this area. WASP2 Z3A with Python leaves is minimally too dark for this environment, but the contour is well broken down. It is also too dark when kneeling at this point. But when prone, the pattern does a good job of camouflage. We have arrived at dusk, a prime time in military and law enforcement. The camouflage patterns are shown in the horizontal view at 25 meters, corresponding to 82 feet. We have diffused light and it's dark, almost black on the ground around the suits, but the background is a bit lighter. The colors fade out more and more and everything appears more and more gray. Will the darker or lighter suits work better here? What do you think? In this set, the camouflage suit New and Multitan are the brightest patterns, followed by WASP2 Z2. NFP and 5FT Flecktarn and M05 are well integrated in the dark. Only the knee is noticeable on WASP2 Z3A. Again, camouflage suit New and Multitan are the brightest patterns, followed by WASP2 Z2, that here however breaks up the outline well. NFP is too dark, standing out against the light background, as are 5FT Flecktarn and M05. WASP2 Z3A is also in the dark area, but has a better contour breakup. Although common belief is that they should have advantages at dusk, the dark suits stand out more here than the lighter ones. Multicam Tropic stands out here as a dark outline. Badlands and Concamo Brown are very bright. Green Zone and Concamo Green work well here. Upright, Pencott and Concamo Brown are too bright. Multicam Tropic is too dark. Green Zone and Concamo Green are also very dark, but they do distort the outline a bit. The black and white image once again underlines how dark Multicam Tropic looks here. Green Zone and Concamo Green are more clearly visible as a contour than when kneeling. Badlands and Concamo Brown are still bright. In this group, OCP is the brightest, ATEX FG is visible in a similar brightness as WASP2 Z2. Kreuzotter is similarly dim as Multicam Tropic, FGX is the best integrated here. MAPAT is just behind OCP in brightness. OCP is too bright in this set, ATEX FG does a good job. Kreuzotter, ATEX FGX and MAPAT are again much too dark. Although MAPAT was perceived as bright in kneeling, it is very dark here along with Kreuzotter and FGX that actually work very well in kneeling. MM14 is the brightest in this group, followed by WASP1 Z2. Advantage Timber work the darkest, followed by Slocum and WASP1 Z3A. In this shot, MM14 is too bright, WASP1 Z2 is good. Slocum WASP1 Z3A and Advantage Timber are again much too dark. The black and white image shows no significant changes from the previous settings. The The twilight here shows that 3D camouflage gives WASP2 Z2 a small advantage, while WASP2 Z3A shows no noticeable differences. In this scene, the Taipan suit in Z3A with Python leaves is the best camouflaged, followed by WASP2 Z2. Again, you can see that significant performance improvement with 3D elements over conventional uniforms. Tune your suit. Also in the black and white view, the 3D suits behave better than the suits without Python leaves, just like in the standing shot before. In the twilight and in the single shot, the camouflage suit Nu impresses with a good camouflage effect. The bright spot fit well to the lighter background. Only when lying down, it is a bit worse. Multitan is best in twilight standing. Kneeling, it is a bit worse. Prone, it is almost too bright. WASP2 Z2 blends in well with its surroundings and breaks up the outline in all three postures. Most effective when prone, where it becomes virtually invisible. NFP is very dark and only effective against a background that is also dark. It is almost noticeable here when standing, perfect when kneeling, and quite good when prone. WASP2 Z3A behaves similarly to Z2 in this environment, providing a very good camouflage effect in all three body positions. Flecktan is very dark and only effective in front of a dark background like NFP. In standing position it is most noticeable. In kneeling position it is perfect. And in prone position it is even better than NFP. MO5 is also quite dark at dusk and behaves exactly the same to 5FT Flecktan. Standing worse. Kneeling perfect. And prone with equal performance to 5FT Flecktan. Badlands stands out too much against the background standing up, although the bright camouflage pattern doesn't appear too bright here. Kneeling. And prone, however, it is brighter again and easier to see. Concamo Brown is a bit too bright in all three postures and stands out against the background. Multicam Tropic just appears black at dusk and is only effective when the background is black as well. So it stands out well when standing. Kneeling in the front of the dark tree is good. As well as when prone. Green zone very dark when standing in twilight. Kneeling it is very good. Prone it is again a little too light. Concamo green is too dark when standing. But works very well when kneeling. And prone. OCP, like Badlands, is much too bright for our set. Unfortunately, in all three body positions, and so is very obtrusive. ATEX FG works quite well in twilight when standing. And kneeling. But is too bright when prone. Kreuzorder is one of the darkest with Multicam Tropic and camouflages accordingly only in front of dark background. Standing, it stands out too much, while kneeling and prone, it performs well here. Kreuzotter and Multicam Tropic are joined by ATEX FGX as the darkest pattern. Here we observe the same behavior as with the other two patterns. Mapat is too dark standing up and too bright when kneeling and prone for this environment. MM14 fits surprisingly well here, although it is a bright camouflage pattern. It gets worse when kneeling and totally stands out when prone. WASP1 Z2 is a little too dark when standing. It is better when kneeling. Lighter spots on the uniform are telltale when prone. Slow cam is very dark standing. Kneeling is similar. But it blends in quite well prone. Wasp 1 Z3A is also very dark and therefore stands out when standing. Kneeling in front of the tree, it is well camouflaged. And prone, it also has a good camouflage effect here. Realtree is very dark when standing. Or kneeling. But works well when prone. Wasp 2 Z2 with python leaves is too bright when standing against lighter background, but difficult to make out because of the outline refraction. Kneeling, like the other dark patterns, it blends well against the tree. While prone, it appears a little too bright. Wasp 2 Z3A with python leaves is the most difficult pattern to make out in this environment and in twilight. Only when standing, you can guess that someone is standing there. From the point of view of camouflage, the following points appear to be exciting. We have observed that patterns that rely on medium brightness in the sense of an on-off mode are either seen as a whole figure or just disappear as a whole figure. In other words, they are specialized for certain applications. The same is applicable in analogy if the one particular color dominates in the pattern. Camouflage patterns that break the outline, on the other hand, have the advantage that parts are always difficult to see against different backgrounds, making the pattern harder to understand consistently. For the overall camouflage effect, not only the camouflage pattern is important, but also the cut down to the details, protectors, velcro zippers, and so on, and 3D elements. But now it's my turn again. Of course, I'm not a doctor or professor, so I hope you'll forgive the claim we made to the position. We just thought it was a good fit for this study. Now you have seen all the participating patterns during the day. We'll soon be presenting part 2 with the night shots to complete this project. Until the next video will come, you can comment in the comment section, give us pros and cons for this video, or we have done good and what was not so good. And as always, like, subscribe the channel if you like it, thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. Again, bye-bye.